very, very exciting beginning there to Virgin Among the Living Dead. At the beginning, it's at the top of this talk just purely because I find it so incredibly exciting as the start of the film. I don't know if any of you know this, but it's quite interesting that the music is by Bruno Nicolai, but if you recall in the music, there's the sound of someone ripping the guts out of a piano. That's Jess. Jess actually attended the recording sessions for the soundtrack, and his contribution to the music was to do woeful damage to the inside of the piano. So that was a collaboration between him and Bruno Nicolai. I'd like to start with two quotations, one from August Strindberg, one from Edgar Allan Poe, and they're both about the difficulty of putting your finger on things which are quite elusive. Strindberg in Inferno, there's an exchange between two characters. One says, "How are you going to explain these phenomena?" And his friend responds, "Explain it? Has anyone ever explained anything except by paraphrasing one set of words from another?" And Edgar Allan Poe in The Fall of the House of Usher, there's a quotation that goes as follows. "I was forced to fall back upon the unsatisfactory conclusion that while, beyond doubt, there are combinations of very simple natural objects which have the power of thus affecting us, still the analysis of this power lies among consideration beyond our depth. It was possible, I reflected, that a mere different arrangement of the particulars of the scene, of the details of the picture, would be sufficient to modify or perhaps to annihilate its capacity for sorrowful impression." The best Franco films are extraordinarily difficult to explain. There are no satisfactory answers to certain questions, like how a film as ramshackle and thematically confused as Dracula Prisoner of Frankenstein can possess some arcane voodoo that makes you watch it 6, 8, 10 times, or why, on the face of it, a very, very overlong 20-minute sequence in Al Otro Lado del Espejo, following a group of friends bar hopping through Madeira, should ache with a kind of ineffable melancholy. I'd stand up with the artistic worth of The Virgin Among the Living Dead in a flash, but if someone said to me, "What's it about?" I'd struggle to offer them a soundbite. If someone said, "What insights into the human condition does it share with us?" Yeah, hard to say. There are questions about Franco's work that you could roll around in your head forever, as if it's as if you're a wine taster, kind of eternally perplexed by a mysterious vintage. Is it cheating for a critic to say that it's probably this very indefinability that makes the film so special, so endlessly compulsive? The pleasures to be found in Franco's films are so near to abstract that we must put aside conventional expectations. Franco's films draw close to the status of music, the most difficult of art forms to explain. You change a single note in a melody and you alter the very air it breathes. As for timbre, well, the possibilities are endless. In Franco's films, potent sensory and emotional effects are embedded in a kind of delinquent spontaneity. Verite elements, natural light, fleeting felicities of performance, erratic framing, insolent or indifferent backgrounds. Chance events collide impossibly and things just feel right. Shot for the most part on location, his cinema vibrates with the charmed accident of reality. Story often disappears from the stage, usurped by the details of light on flesh, ellipses of the editing, and an emphasis on blurring and imprecision, and a willingness to sacrifice progression for an obsessive dwelling on the moment. I'm going to talk about three interesting facets of Franco's films. His preoccupation with mind control, which runs through many of his films. His fascination with the sea, again, a constant presence, and his treatment of time especially in relation to desire. And finally, I'd just like to say a few words as well on the subject of artistic freedom, the freedom to which he became addicted as his career progressed. And now it's a quotation from Carmilla.
My sleep was delightfully deep and dreamless, but I wakened with a sense of lassitude and melancholy, which however did not exceed a degree that was almost luxurious. For some nights I slept profoundly, but still every morning I felt the same lassitude, and a languor weighed upon me all day. A strange melancholy was stealing over me, a melancholy that I would not have interrupted. Dim thoughts of death began to open, and an idea that I was slowly sinking took gentle and somehow not unwelcome possession of me. If it was sad, the tone of mind which it induced was also sweet. Whatever it might be, my soul acquiesced in it.
Mind control, then. Mind control is a constant theme in Franco's cinema, from the surgical lobotomies and radio control devices of the awful Dr. Orloff and Dr. Orloff's monster, to the psychological hypno-assassin fantasies of Nightmares Come at Night, or Voodoo Passion and Mil Sexos Tiene la Noche. Along with Sardian fantasies, incest fantasies, and the travails of women in prison, mind control is one of the hottest wellsprings in Franco's cinema. He explores it from a wide variety of angles. Hypnosis, vampiric seduction, erotic seduction, drugs, all of which lead back to the same fascination of one being controlling the thoughts and actions of another. So why was it so fascinating? That's all right. Jump cut. A little bit more of the Koshima, please. So why was it so fascinating? Well, to begin with, consider this. Having made approximately 180 films, and give or take the ones that never got released, and assuming an average shooting schedule of 14 days, Jess Franco has spent roughly 7 whole years of his life shooting movies. That's 12 hours a day, 365 days a year for 7 years. And that's before we factor in the time spent on post-production. That's 7 years coaxing fantasies onto celluloid, 7 years guiding and goading and cajoling actors to manifest an idea that he had floating in his head. And for a man who spent so much of his life peering down a viewfinder at a group of people who've agreed to act out his fantasies, the theme of mind control must have had deep associations with the creative act. The director is the great Svengali. The cast are his willing, sometimes truculent puppets, simulating all manner of crimes or depredations on his instruction. Likewise, the audience, if the filmmaker's on top of his game, are steered psychologically this way and that. Their emotions, their heart rates, their anxieties, their arousals, fears and desires are nudged and guided, stroked and cajoled by the images projected on the screen. Mind control is therefore a wonderfully flexible and potent narrative metaphor for the cinema. It allows Franco to be both self-reflective without the need for making a film within a film, or a film about filmmaking. Notably, he only ever filmed a film crew 3 times, in Vampiresses 1930, which is a sort of an early musical comedy, and in The Sexy Darlings, which was the UK title for Robinson and His Wild Slaves, which is a kind of a sex comedy, and in El Sexo Está Loco, which is the best of the 3, I think, which is this amazing self-reflexive early 1980s movie. But out of 180 movies, that's shown quite a bit of restraint when it comes to filming the filmmaking process. It's like he didn't need to. We're talking about a benevolent kind of mind control, of course, when we're talking about Franco as director. He was not the sort of bully actors. He allowed them freedom to improvise within scenes. He was fairly hands-off in a lot of ways. But this is simply the sign of the master manipulator, after all. Don't crack the whip. You get better results if the actors feel in control. The manipulator knows that if you offend a person's sense of autonomy, they're likely to resist you. It's better to convince them that they're free and bend them to your will more subtly. It's a strategy that successful film directors employ all the time. If you listen to interviews with actors and they're always saying things like, I had creative freedom, the director is a director who directs without directing, that sort of thing, which allows, the kind of director that allows the actor to bring ideas to the table. You hear this all the time. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. The trick as a director is to make the actors feel as though they're free while drawing them gently into service of your own private fantasies. Franco's fascination with mind control is thus firstly a reflection upon his own role as a purveyor of very personal fantasies in what is ostensibly a collaborative medium. Now, Franco rarely used mind control in its more common movie context, political brainwashing. Even the women in prison films avoid this topic, with the brutalization of political prisoners being essentially purely sadistic. American movies of the 50s, such as The Bamboo Prison and The Fear Makers, drew upon stories of brainwashing procedures employed by foreign powers to extract information. The preeminent example is the 1962 film The Manchurian Candidate. And things like the CIA's use of various means of inducing involuntary behaviour like drugs and hypnosis, electroconvulsive therapy, so-called psychic driving, these are hardly represented in Franco's films. The closest would be Blue Rita, in which an aphrodisiac, paste, is smeared onto imprisoned secret agents prior to interrogation, inducing intoxicating sexual arousal, which is then heightened to an unbearable degree by sexual teasing and the withholding of sexual contact. It's a very Franco-esque spin on the government-sponsored mind control thing. However, as so often for Franco, politics or the political exercise of power in the real world is not the focus of his obsession. For Franco, mind control is about the individual, about the cinematic object of lust. It unleashes sexual fantasies about the borderline between agency and subservience, free will and slavery, a place of contestation and ambiguity where rights and wrongs shade into grey, between coercion and persuasion, between ravishment and seduction, lies a complex land of ambivalence. Just as Charles Manson persuaded a group of drug-addled hippies to go out and kill without having to lay a finger on the victims himself, Franco's Spengalis used the force of their personalities to influence weaker-minded individuals to enact crimes on their behalf. This is where the mind control narratives dovetail with Franco's Sardian tales. They're about the strong exerting power over the weak. And if we could just watch now a clip from the Russian Classic Frankenstein. We're deconstructing the apparatus of the presentation.
Here Frankenstein, the master speaks. Cagliostro, through his magnetic power, makes use of me, his servant Melissa, to transmit his orders to you. Bend your will to that of Cagliostro. You will belong to him in spirit and body. You will willingly perform all that is asked of you. You cannot resist. No effort of yours is strong enough to resist. The magnetic power is upon you. It plucks your will like a flower. Your strength of mind pleases Cagliostro. Your pride delights Cagliostro. He is impressed by your courage. Yes. And he has great admiration. Thrusting his will in you, surging within you like a wave. You master within me. The magnetic power recedes. You now belong to the master.